Hey everybody, welcome to the game plan. This is Wild Card Weekend, and we are talking all about the Buffalo Bills versus the Houston Texans. Big matchup, interesting matchup. What we do in this video, if you're new to it, is we break down the key injuries, the key stats, the key analytics. I put a game plan together, a completely bias-free game plan. I'm not a big fan of the Bills or the Texans. I'm not really a fan for any team. I really just put this together for betting purposes and my own amusement. So a bias-free analysis, a path to victory for both teams, and then at the end, if you're a daily fantasy football player, we have fantasy football projections for you as well. As I always say before I start these videos, if you could give me 2 seconds of your time for 2 clicks, a like and a subscribe, that really helps us out. But let's just dig into the key injuries. And I would say, as you can see on the screen here, the Buffalo Bills are a lot healthier coming into this game than the Houston Texans. The Bills, you basically have a cornerback and a reserve defensive lineman on their injury list. The Texans, meanwhile, you have Will Fuller, which I think that's a big injury, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. You have Kenny Stills, Laramie Tunsil, and then basically 3/4 of their starting unit in terms of defensive backs. That is a big deal. However, based on the brand of football that Buffalo plays, it's not going to hurt them as much, the Houston Texans, as much as it would if they were playing a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, which if they get by, maybe they can play the Kansas City Chiefs later in the playoffs. But let's get into the key stats. And again, if you're new to this show, basically these are in terms of yardage accumulation throughout the entire year, these rankings, and I like to put position group by position group. So you see the Buffalo Bills passing offense is ranked 26th in the league. They have to get better at that. In fact, their passing offense kind of let them down against the Patriots and the Ravens to close out the season there. Those are games that they could have won if they could have made things work in the passing game, didn't take advantage of their opportunities. Meanwhile, the Houston Texans are ranked 29th in passing defense. This is a matchup that Buffalo needs to win. This is a matchup that Houston needs to win. It's a key matchup for this game. Then you look at the passing defense for the Bills. They're 4th ranked versus the 15th ranked passing offense for the Texans. Now, I mentioned before about Will Fuller being on that injury list. He's listed as questionable as of the time of this recording. Based on the research I've done before this, it does not lead me to believe that he's going to be able to get over that groin injury. He's always plagued by hamstrings, by groin injuries. I think he had an ACL tear. It's unfortunate because the Houston Texans are really just an electric team when he's in the lineup. I think he is, while certainly Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins would certainly be higher than Will Fuller in terms of the MVP vote for the Houston Texans. Will Fuller basically makes this offense and takes it up to another level. When he's in the game, when he's healthy, he plays a full game. The Texans are 7-2 this year. Most of their losses have come when he's outside the lineup. And what ends up happening, and I talked to Brad about this on the Get Paid podcast earlier in the week, what ends up happening is when Will Fuller's out and Houston does not have that vertical component, teams start ratcheting up the pressure on DeAndre Hopkins. Now, Hopkins is so good that he can basically put up nice stats anyway, but he's even better when that pressure is off of him because teams have to basically honor Will Fuller's speed. Now, what ends up happening again as an offshoot to that, the way teams can get around this, and you see this happening in Philadelphia this year, is if you have a really, really good tight end that can basically dominate the middle of that field, or maybe if you had a dominant slot receiver, a guy like maybe a Julian Edelman or something like that, then you can kind of get by and move the chains. But Houston doesn't really have that guy. Kiki QT has not developed into that guy, and apparently he's fallen out of favor this year. Kenny Stills, they acquired him from Miami. He didn't really, he doesn't fill in for Will Fuller. I think that Fuller injury is huge, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Run offense for the Bills is 8th versus the 25th ranked run defense for Houston. Now, if J.J. Watt can come back, that is going to help the Houston Texans run defense. But, at last check, I think he was 3rd on the depth chart. Maybe that will go better, or maybe he'll be promoted within that depth chart. But what that tells me is they're still kind of easing him back into football action after being on the injured reserve for so long. And then the run defense for the Bills is 10th versus the 9th ranked rushing offense for the Texans. The Texans are getting it done in the running game. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, key analytics. Again, if you're new to this show, analytics, these key analytics, these are kind of the better stats. These are the very first thing that bettors tend to look at when they're choosing on whether or not to make a wager on a team, or make a pick in a game, or whatever the case is. Now, there's a lot more that goes into everybody's individual formulas, but I like putting this out there, and it gets you thinking a little bit more about play for play, series for series than you might get if you're looking at just like an NFL.com or ESPN.com stats, or those position rankings we're looking at before. Yards per play for Buffalo. Their offense averages 5.2 yards per play. Their defense gives up 4.8 yards per play. And what that is, and I know you don't have the entire rankings in front of you, what that tells you is Buffalo's defense is elite. Any defense that gives up less than 5 yards per play is on the elite side. The Patriots give up less than that. Maybe the San Francisco 49ers, I don't know if they still are under that because they had a kind of a tough go with some injuries towards the end of the year, but that is a very good defense. Now, the offense, unfortunately, is not very good in the yards per play. Their per play efficiency, not the best, and I think that's indicative of having a younger quarterback. As Josh Allen develops in his career, that number you'll see will start to go to 5.5, 5.8, and that net yardage per play, that differential between what the defense gives up and the offense gives up, will start to get closer to a full yard. And when they do that, Buffalo will go from a team that kind of gets the 5th seed in playoffs to really challenging for the top seed in the playoffs, and that's what you're going to see throughout the season. Now let's look at the Houston Texans differential. Now they give up 6.1 yards per play, which is interesting, and only their offense only averages 5.7 yards per play. So the offensive average, mind you, is better, but the defense is so much worse. They actually have a net of negative 0.4 yards per play, and that's almost unheard of for a division winner. But the AFC South wasn't as strong, and I will say this. Again, bringing Will Fuller up again, this offense is night and day when Will Fuller is in the lineup. They're a lot more explosive. They get bigger plays. They get bigger yardage. And remember, too, Deshaun Watson's a winner. I would say in terms of quarterback, Houston has probably the advantage at quarterback. They have the advantage at wide receiver, even if Will Fuller's out. And then they probably, I would say they're maybe even or a little bit better, the Texans are, than the Bills in terms of running back personnel. But the Bills' defense is just lights out this year. Nobody's talking about them the way that they should be talked about. I think they're second in the league in terms of points given up behind the Patriots. They're at like 15 a game given up. This is a fantastic Bills defense, and you cannot sleep on a team that can run the ball successfully and play defense like the Buffalo Bills can. So this is a very dangerous matchup for Houston. Everybody's been sleeping on the Bills all year. I came into the season sleeping on them, but it only took me a game or two of watching them to say, what, this team can play, and they're a very, very dangerous team. Let's look at the third down, basically situational football, third down and fourth down percentages. How good are the teams at staying on the field offensively and getting off the field defensively? You can see the Buffalo Bills on third down offensively only convert about 36% of the time. That's not good. Meanwhile, Houston converts about 43% of the time. That is good. Okay. Then you look at Houston's defensively, though. They give up third down conversions close to half the time. No good. Okay. And then Buffalo, meanwhile, on third down, predictably, they only give up a first down about a third of the time. So, again, this is kind of following suit. Buffalo's offense is not able to keep up with their defense, but hey, when your defense is that good, you're going to win a lot of games, as Buffalo has. Houston, they need to do better. They need to get off the field on third downs. They need to force some turnovers. If you look into the second to last row there, you can see that Houston's turnover margin is 0. That means they got the same amount of turnovers as they generated, or I'm sorry, they gave up as many turnovers as they generated. Buffalo, meanwhile, is plus 0.2, so not a ton of disparity there. I think Houston's going to need to force a turnover this week, and I think Josh Allen's accuracy and his ability to hold on to the ball both, in the running game, in the pocket, and not fumbling and not throwing interceptions, that's going to be paramount in this game because I think the defenses are really just going to kind of slug each other to death. I mean, this has all the makings of like a 17-14 type game where each possession, and not only each possession, but each like incremental 20 yards of field position are just going to be massive. If teams can get themselves into field goal position and can convert those field goals, those are going to be big. Again, when I look at this in situational, in terms of yardage, I actually give the favor, and injuries as well as we looked at in the stats, I'm giving the advantage more towards the Buffalo Bills. I know Houston Texans fans, you're not going to like to hear that, but analytically speaking right now, if Will Fuller's out of the game, I got to say I'm leaning towards the Bills in a very close game here. If you look at the red zone percentage, the Buffalo Bills score 56.8% of the time, and that's because Josh Allen can run the ball, Devin, Singletary, Frank Gore can run the ball. You look at the Houston Texans, they score about 64% of the time. Remember, they're the 9th ranked rushing offense in the league. They can run the ball, and they have Deshaun Watson throwing the ball, and they have some weapons. The problem is for the Houston Texans, they give up touchdowns in this red zone touchdown percentage 71% of the time. That's bad. That's really, really bad. Buffalo, meanwhile, Their defense gives up. They're actually a little bit worse than I thought. They give up a touchdown about 55, 56% of the time. So that's not great. But again, if I'm just taking a look at everything, all the analytics, to me, it still comes down to Will Fuller, his ability to make this a more vertical approach for Houston, to open things up. Because if Buffalo can play a little bit of a zone, try to do their best to bottle up, I don't think they're going to shut down, but do their best to bottle up DeAndre Hopkins, play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage with their linebackers and limit that 9th-ranked rushing offense, it could be a very painful loss for Houston. And I say painful, every playoff loss is painful, but I know Houston fans are coming in here thinking, Buffalo, who's Buffalo? Who are they beating? And all that stuff. This is going to be a painful, just in terms of optics, in terms of the reporting after the fact. Bill O'Brien loses another play. This would be a really bad loss for the Houston Texans to take. Again, I respect the Bills, but I don't think the national media really respects the Bills. I don't think a lot of people watch enough football to really take in a lot of Buffalo Bills games. I'm a little bit of a degenerate when it comes to NFL football. I'm not a fan of every team, so I make it a point to watch every team about half the games to 3/4 of the games they play each year. Thank you, NFL Game Pass, for making that a lot easier for me. So let's take a look at the path to victory for both of these teams here. And then again, we'll close it out with some fantasy football projections. The Bills, they come into this game a lot healthier. Test the banged up Houston Texans secondary. So big passing downfield isn't really the game for Buffalo. Now, Buffalo fans will know that Josh Allen will take shots downfield. He came into the NFL, with a big arm and all that stuff, but they're not really executing a ton of big plays. I do think that they need to test Houston, and I'm a big fan just strategically. If I were an offensive coordinator, I would test everybody downfield. I don't even care if it's 3rd and long, just throw it downfield, throw it over everybody's head, or throw a deep interception and try to get a tackle or something downfield, because you got to keep defenses honest. You can't let them ratchet up and try to stop that Buffalo Bills running game. Defensively, it's likely Will Fuller will be out. That means shutting down DeAndre Hopkins is going to be the absolute most important thing. I do not think Kenny Stills or Kiki QT or whoever else is playing wide receiver can beat Buffalo's secondary. So it all comes down, if Will Fuller is out, to Buffalo stopping DeAndre Hopkins, and then you have Deshaun Watson basically trying to hit Duke Johnson out of the backfield and hit Darren Fells on key 3rd and long situations. That is the formula, I think. Those two top lines right there, more than anything, are the formula for success for the Buffalo Bills. But let's keep it moving here. Josh Allen needs that clean sheet, like I said. He needs to protect the ball. This turnover margin, it would not shock me if the winner of the turnover margin wins the game. That the margin of victory for these two teams is that thin. Houston comes in as a 3-point favorite. I would take Buffalo to win by 3. Unless Will Fuller plays, and then I have Houston winning by 4. So I think Buffalo scores 20 in this game, by the way. I think Houston scores 17 without Fuller. I think they score 24 with Fuller. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see. Get the run game going. You don't want basically Josh Allen having to throw and stay in the pocket downfield all game long. Get the running game going. If you're having tough sledding, don't go away from it. Stay patient with Frank Gore and get Devin Singletary involved somehow. If you can't get him going off tackle or on sweeps or something like that, get him coming out of the backfield on screen passes, get him involved. Lastly, Isaiah McKenzie has a nice matchup. Now, he hasn't really flashed too much during the season, but he is a guy that can have a really nice game, and I think Buffalo probably needs him to show up in 1 or 2 plays, big plays like 40 to 50-yard receptions or something like that. They need 1 or 2 of those, I think, from Isaiah McKenzie this week, and he will have the opportunity. Now, next, we have the Houston Texans' path to victory, in my opinion. First and foremost, keep Josh Allen in the pocket. Josh Allen can extend plays. He can get, basically on the ground, he can get a 3rd and 4 converted himself. I would say it's more likely that he picks up a 3rd and 4 on a scramble than on a bubble screen or something like that. So keep him in the pocket, make him be a quarterback. I would say sell out to stop the run. A lot of run blitzes. Basically get pressure. If they're not running the ball, then put that pressure on Josh Allen. Make him stand firm in the pocket and deliver the ball downfield. If you can force a turnover to, believe me, Buffalo would love to get into a defensive brawl with Houston in this game. They have no problem playing that kind of game. And I don't think Houston would have any kind of problem taking it to the 4th quarter with Deshaun Watson and what I would call the superior quarterback in that matchup. But Houston has an opportunity, in my opinion, to put this game away early if they can basically get to Josh Allen early. This is Josh Allen, if I'm not mistaken, his first playoff game in the NFL. There's going to be a little bit of nervous energy. That nervous energy can translate to maybe a high pass or a missed pass here and there. You convert one or two of those into interceptions in the first quarter and a half. This game could be over. It is that close in terms of margin, like I've been saying. Let's see here. Deshaun Watson needs another receiver to step up. I don't think it's Will Fuller. So Kenny Stills, hey, they traded for you. Show up. And then lastly, Duke Johnson. He is, I think, assuming Will Fuller is unable to play, I think Duke Johnson out of the backfield is the guy that's going to have to get these chains moving. You still send DeAndre Hopkins down the field. He might be double covered. You might be a little cover two in his area. He gets a cornerback, gets a safety on top of him. Well, you know what? Run him a little bit down the field, run him in intermediate routes, and have Duke Johnson clear out and come in behind him. You're going to need to move, and then Darren Fells is going to have to move the chains as well, like I was saying earlier. Key matchup there. It's a bummer. I really hope Will Fuller can get it and go in this week and play a full regimen of snaps. Like I said, as of the time of this video recording, I don't think that's possible, but if he is, I really think he's going to be a difference maker in this game. Let's close it out now with some fantasy football predictions, courtesy of Rockobot. Now, Rockobot is my fantasy football computer algorithm that I use to basically help me make my fantasy football decisions of the week. So if you're a daily fantasy football player, I like Josh Allen. I think he's going to give you nice value this week. I don't love Frank Gore. Devin Singletary, depending on his budget, could be a nice play. John Brown, I do think he'll have a nice matchup, and I think he'll score well. Isaiah McKenzie, I mentioned he'll have opportunities, but Rockobot doesn't think he'll execute on those opportunities. I think Buffalo needs him to. Cole Beasley projects to have a nice game over the middle, but I don't love it this week. It's something, my gut's telling me to disagree with Rockobot here, so that would be my advice. But I'll say Rockobot's pretty good with slot receivers, so take that with a grain of salt. You have Dawson Knox at 6.1. That's a sit for me. Don't pay any attention to Dawson Knox. And then the defense is actually graded pretty well at a 7.6. Now for Houston, you have Deshaun Watson. I would say as a fringe start. I would say, again, if we're talking about daily fantasy here, Deshaun Watson is going to cost a lot more than Josh Allen. Remember, Josh Allen's going to get you some running yards. So I would actually prefer to spend my budget this week on Josh Allen, although, like I said, I think Deshaun Watson is a superior NFL quarterback. But if we're trying to make money in daily fantasy, Josh Allen's my guy this week. Running game, Carlos Hyde, Duke Johnson. I don't love them, or I should say Rockobot doesn't love them. Remember, schematically, Duke Johnson is going to have opportunities this week. So if you're looking for a really kind of lower budget running back, maybe you're investing in like Derrick Henry or something in another game, Duke Johnson, I think, will give you nice value. Could be one of the lower cost guys that you can get at running back. You have DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller both as starts. Remember, Will Fuller is out. If he does not play, I shouldn't say Will Fuller is out. I expect him to be out. If he doesn't play, I would say Kenny Stills was probably more at about an 8 or a 9. With Kiki QT maybe coming in behind him or somebody like that. But I really don't like any other receiver here if Fuller is out. Then Darren Fells, if Fuller's out, I think Fells gets up close to an 8 and would probably be a start-worthy player. And I don't really love the Houston Texans defense, or I should say Rockobot doesn't. Now, I think I'm going to look at the lines and I'm going to see some of the prop bets, see if I can get Josh Allen on an interception count. I think Josh Allen's going to throw 1 or 2 interceptions this game, so I might take a prop bet there. And if I end up being right, then the Houston Texans defense will exceed my expectations. Certainly, I think they'll get some sacks. So even though Rockobot has them at a 5, I really think that Houston's, based on just being able to get some sacks and generate maybe more turnovers than Rockobot projects, I think Houston might offer you some nice defensive potential as well. So there you go. There's a full preview of the Buffalo Bills versus Houston Texans. I know I have a lot of people from both teams that watch these channels. Like I said, I'm unbiased. I really am. Again, my official prediction is if Will Fuller plays, it's 24-20 Houston, and Houston covers. Assuming he is out, which I believe he will be, I'm going to take Buffalo 20-17. Buffalo covering the +3 spread there. So once again, fans of every team, please comment, certainly like and subscribe, but comment. Let me know why you agree, why you disagree. Good luck to both of those fan bases out there. I look forward to watching this game. It's a great matchup. As a football fan, as an agnostic football fan, just a lover of the sport, this is going to be a good one. Buffalo's a good, strong team, underrated in the national scheme or national media and all that. And Houston, they're hungry for some playoff success. So it's going to be a good one, everybody. Check us out. We're going to do all the games this week as well. So look for another video, and we'll catch you soon. Thanks, everyone.